Hello and welcome back to Parc Fermé Parlay with Kieran Downey. The F1 2025 season is edging ever closer. I can see it. It's on the horizon. We have had our first cars out on track. McLaren, Williams and Haas have all debuted their 2025 challengers. McLaren's on Tuesday or Wednesday, I think it was. Williams on Valentine's Day on the 14th. Haas is currently out today. McLaren debuted their car at a shakedown at Silverstone. Williams had a whole launch event at Silverstone as well. They had a whole live stream. They had Jenson Button, Naomi Schiff, Carlos was out in the car. They had Q&As. It was a lot of fun and I did really enjoy it. Haas is taking part in a shakedown today and it is very exciting to see these 2025 challengers out on track. We don't get anything from this apart from seeing the cars on track. It's more for the drivers to get a feel of the car. They can report back to the engineers and the teams how these cars sort of feel and how the performance is going, and they can begin to make changes ahead of testing in Bahrain. Now, with all that being said, we are here today to do another predictions video, and this time it is for the championship order. How we think the championship's going to go, where the drivers are going to be within the championship at the end of the year for the 2025 season. Now, I am going to do all 21 drivers because I do believe that we are going to get a mid-season change, and we're going to talk about it right now because I'm kicking things off with P21, Jack Doohan. Listen, the rumours are strong and it seems that he is out at Alpine before the season has even begun. There is all kinds of rumours flying about that he could be out by Japan, Miami, the Spanish GP. Like, there's so many different rumours going around, but it does seem that Doohan's days at Alpine are numbered and there is definitely some kind of performance clause within his contract. What sparked all of this? The signing of Franco Colapinto, obviously. Alpine have spent a huge amount of money to get Colapinto out of his Williams contract. I cannot see them spending all that money to not get him a full-time race seat, get him on track driving as one of their two drivers. So it does just seem that the pressure is on for Doohan, and I do expect that that pressure may get to him. I don't think he's going to perform that great. I also don't think he's going to get a lot of time to embed himself into being an F1 driver. I think it's all going to go pretty quickly for Doohan and he's not going to have a strong start to the season. I don't think he's going to score any points before he gets heave-hoed out that car. Like, I genuinely think that Briatore is going to haul him out the car to let Franco Colapinto in. I just don't see Doohan doing any big length of time, unfortunately, and I actually feel really bad for him. As I said, he's out of that seat before the season's even begun. P21 in the championship. I really hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. Next up in P20, I've gone for Gabriele Bortoleto. Listen, this is nothing against Bortoleto. I actually think he's a great driver. I think he's very strong. He is the current F2 champion. As I said, this is nothing against him. It is against the car that he's going to be driving. He is obviously one of the two Sauber drivers for 2025, and I am not expecting big things from Sauber, to be honest with you. They had a near pointless campaign last year. One of their drivers, the more experienced driver, Valtteri Bottas, didn't score any points. You could argue that he might have scored points in Abu Dhabi, but we'll never know. Bortoleto is going to be driving an absolute tractor, and even if they find some performance in that car, I don't think it's going to be enough to score Bortoleto any real points. I also think that the team won't be putting a huge amount of focus into their 2025 car. Like, if you're Sauber, you're ending one set of regulations, going into another set, a huge regulation change in 2026, and you have a full team takeover happening. It just doesn't seem like this year is going to be anything for Sauber. And I think for Audi, they don't care about this year. They are full steam ahead for 2026. I just don't think it's going to be a good year for Sauber, unfortunately. And as I said, nothing against Gabriele Bortoleto. It's just the fact he will be pretty much driving a tractor. And even if, as I said, even if they find some performance in that car, I don't think it's going to be enough to get him any real points. Next up in P19, I've gone for Nico Hülkenberg. Again, very strong driver, and this is not anything against him as a driver or his skills as a driver, but he is driving for Sauber. He is driving a tractor, and I don't think he's going to have the machinery to score good points, to be honest with you. Like, we seen it last year. Give him a decent car, he can go and score points. He was pretty consistent last year in his point scoring. I just don't think he's going to have the car to do it this year. And I actually think that for quite a lot of them, this year might actually be a write-off, and they're just looking forward to Audi taking over in 2026. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that we're going to... I think Nico had a very good year last year, and I just don't think it's going to be the same for this year. And I think it's purely down to the car that he's going to be driving. All right, next up, P18. I've gone for Isaac Hadjar. Again, very good driver, came second in the F2 Championship in 2024. He is joining a fairly decent midfield team, but he is surrounded by drivers that are seasoned, that have been part of F1 for a long time, and that are more developed as F1 drivers. Alex Albon, Carlos Sainz, his own teammate Yuki Tsunoda. Like, I can't see Isaac Hadjar finishing ahead of Yuki or Carlos, Albon. Like, I just don't see it happening. I don't think he'll have a completely pointless campaign. I think he will be able to get some sort of low points finishes in. I think he will have some good drives. I do think as a rookie, though, he is going to have some mistakes. It's his rookie season. I would be surprised if he didn't. But I just don't see him making a huge impression and sort of having amazing races where he's, in the mid points. I think he's sort of at that lower end points, which is still great, but I just don't think I think he's going to be the sort of lower down the midfield. I'm going with P18 for Hadjar. All right, next up, P17. Gone Franco Colapinto. As I said, I do think he's replacing Jack Doohan, and I don't know where or when this happens, but he's not going to have a full season, obviously, to be scoring points. He's going to have part of a season longer than he did last year, and I do think that his season will be fairly reminiscent of last year, where I think he'll have some phenomenal races, score some great points, but will also have quite a few crashes and all that kind of stuff. As I said, he's only going to have part of a year to try and score points. I feel like with Colapinto, it's just like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this. Like, it was a little bit of time as an F2 driver, a little bit of time as an F1 Williams driver. Now he's a reserve driver for Alpine, probably for a short amount of time before he's called up to replace Jack Doohan. There's a lot of movement about Franco Colapinto. I think he's a good driver. I do think that he will step into that seat with a huge amount of pressure, way more pressure than what he had when he replaced Logan Sargent. And I do believe that he will have potentially more poor performances than he will have great ones. But yeah, Franco Colapinto, P17. All right, next up, P16. I've gone for Alex Albon. I think 2025 will be another struggle for Alex Albon. And I think a lot of that may be down to Williams as a team. James Vowles, at the launch had said, he was like, a lot of my focus is on 2026 and 2027, 2028. Is this year... Like, I can't imagine Williams is just going to write off this year. They can't afford to because they need the money. And if they're not performing, their sponsors won't be happy. And, it's just a whole big snowball effect. So I don't think Williams will just write off 25, but I do think that they are in for another struggle of a season similar to 2024. I hope I'm wrong, but I sort of said when we talked at the end of last season that Albon let himself get pulled down by the struggles of Williams, and I do believe that that could be the case again this year. I think that he is under a lot more pressure this year than he has the past, 3 years? The past 3 years, he's been the number one driver at the team, paired alongside a rookie or a driver that is not up to the same standard as Alex Albon. Logan Sargent, Nicholas Latifi, Franco Colapinto was the only driver in the past 3 years that brought a fight to Albon as a teammate, but even towards the end of the year, Williams was just a complete mess. He now has an incredibly good driver as a teammate. He is a podium sitter, a race winner. He fights at the front of the field. I wonder how Albon will cope with having Carlos Sainz as a teammate and the sort of change in dynamics at Williams, because Carlos Sainz is the driver that is used to fighting at the front. So will Williams sort of rely a little bit more on Carlos, and will Albon sort of kind of slip into that number 2 driver role? I don't know. In terms of everything, I think Albon will have a fairly similar year to 2024. I do think that the team will struggle and it will sort of pull him down a little bit. I do think we'll have moments of greatness where he's scoring good points, but I don't think it will be enough to sort of put him higher up the order at the end of the year, and I do think it's a P16 for Alex Albon. For P15, I've gone for Lance Stroll. Again, I don't think Aston Martin's going to have a particularly strong year. I think that they will start off the year struggling a little bit, and as the year progresses and the developments sort of go in, I do think that the car will get better. I think it will take a lot of time. As I said, I don't think it's going to be when Adrian Newey joins and it's a click of the fingers and we're Aston Martin's, at the front of the pack. I do think that he will be able to sort of help guide them with the developments of the car. They also have a whole host of other people within that team that will be able to help guide the developments of that car to hopefully get it to be more competitive. I do think that by the end of the year, Aston Martin will have a fairly solid car. I do think it will be quite late in the season. In saying that, I just don't think Lance Stroll is going to be able to capitalise on it and take advantage of the Aston Martin getting more competitive. I fully believe that Stroll will be behind Alonso nearly every step of the way. Maybe 1 or 2 races that he finishes or out-qualifies Alonso. I don't think it's going to be huge margins though. I feel like he just doesn't quite have it, and that his performance is going to be worse than last year. And I do think that that will just be a trend for Lance Stroll, where it's just getting a little bit worse each year until he finally just says, I can't be bothered. So yeah, P15 for Lance Stroll. Now P14, I've gone Carlos Sainz. It's his first year in Williams. He will massively outperform Alex Albon, I think. I think he will outperform him in qualifying, in the races. I think he'll just all round have a much better season than Alex Albon. I do think he will struggle with the car. I don't think it's going to be a strong car for Williams this year. I don't think it's going to be massively different to last year's Challenger. In saying that, I do think Sainz will extract every ounce of performance out of the car, but it just won't be enough. Sainz is an incredibly talented driver. I just think he's not going to have the machinery to allow him to showcase what he can do to his full potential. I think he will be hampered by that car. On the whole, I do think there will be an improvement from Williams. I think they will be a little bit more consistent, but I just don't think there's going to be, I don't think they're going to be making any huge impressions. And as I said, I think Carlos will extract every ounce of performance that is available in that car, but it won't be enough for him to get any higher. I don't think he's got a look in at the top 10 this year, to be honest with you. And it's a shame because he is an incredibly talented driver. He's just stuck in incredibly poor machinery. All right, P13, I've got Ollie Behrman. Haas is on a pretty steep upward trajectory, and I hope that they can continue that upward trajectory, because if they can, I think Oliver Behrman is in for a pretty decent season, to be honest with you. I think he showed that he's an incredibly talented driver last year, stepping in for some pretty intense races and being able to perform fairly decently. I think he's going to have a solid rookie year. I think he will make some mistakes, part of it being his rookie season, and I do think he will score some solid points. And I think P13 in his rookie year in Haas is not to be laughed at. As I said, I think Haas is on a pretty decent upward trajectory. I think if they can deliver a pretty decent car for him and Esteban Ocon, I don't see there being any huge problems. I think just the drivers that are going to be ahead of him are more experienced drivers or just in slightly better machinery. But all round, a fairly solid season, I think, for Oliver Behrman. All right, next up in P12, I've gone Liam Lawson. Now, part of me thinks, Kieran, Liam Lawson is going to be driving a Red Bull. Why are you putting him P12? He should definitely be higher. And then I looked at the drivers that I had left and I thought, nah. I think Liam Lawson is a very good driver. I think he is incredibly talented. However, I think he will struggle with the Red Bull car for 2025. Red Bull quite famously have very aggressive cars that could be quite unpredictable, and I think that Lawson will struggle with that. He will struggle with just how aggressive the car is, just how on a knife edge the car is, and I do think that the car will get the better of him ever so slightly. I do think that this is obviously his first full season in F1. He has done 2 parts of a season, I think in total like 11 races. And in those 11 races has had some great performances. And as I said, this is no slight on him as a driver. I just think he will have... I think he'll have a decent year. I think he'll have some great points finishes. I do think he'll struggle with the car. I do think that he will make some silly mistakes, to be completely honest with you. I've seen him getting caught up in silly petty little things last year. I think it will be the same this year. I'm locking in P12. All right, next up, P11. I've gone Fernando Alonso. I think Alonso will have a bit of a better year. I think he'll have a much better year than his teammate. And I do think that as the developments in Aston Martin begin to kick in, as I said, I do think the car will get a bit better. And I did say in my bold predictions that Alonso will win a race towards the end of the 2025 season, and I'm sticking with it. He'll get his 33rd win, and we'll all be cheering and losing our minds. But I think it's a solid P11, just outside the top 10 for Fernando Alonso. All right, now making our way into the top 10, and in P10 for 2025, a Yuki Tsunoda. I think it will be a pretty strong year for Yuki. That man has a fire in his belly and a point to prove after being looked over for the Red Bull seat yet again. I do think he will give it his all. I think he will be a little bit more consistent this year than he was in last year. I don't think the performance of the car will be massively different to last year, but I do think it'll be a solid year for Yuki, and I think he will score some decent points, and it'll be a lovely P10 finish in the championship for him in what could possibly be his final year for RB, because I think he's leaving the Red Bull family by the end of the year. It just, all roads seem to be pointing that way. But yeah, I think a pretty decent season for Yuki Tsunoda. I think that Yuki is going into this year with 1 goal and 1 goal only, and that is to outperform Liam Lawson. I think he'll do it. I really do. I think he'll do it. All right, coming in to P9, Pierre Gasly. I think Gasly's in a lovely little spot coming into this year. He's off the back of a great end to 2024. I think if Alpine have delivered a somewhat decent car rather than the combine harvester they had at the beginning of 2024, Gasly's in a good spot to attack from the beginning of the year, try and get some decent points finishes in. And listen, Gasly's a good driver, and I think that he has the capability, if Alpine give him a decent car, he's got every opportunity to go and get some decent points in the bag. I don't think he'll go any higher in the championship, because I think when I look at the next sort of set of drivers we've got from P8 upwards, I think that's going to be a solid pack to try and break into, and I think Gasly just won't quite get into it. But I do think he'll score some decent points and have a lovely little year for Pierre Gasly. All right, coming up is his former teammate, and I've gone for P8, Esteban Ocon. A new team, a new mindset. Fingers crossed that Haas can provide a decent car. And with all of that together, I have no doubt that Esteban Ocon will have a great year. I think, as I said in my last video, I think Esteban Ocon is a seriously underrated driver. I think he gets a lot of shit. Yeah, he makes some mad moves, but so does a lot of the drivers. Like Max Verstappen was never done making mad moves last year. I think he is in for a pretty decent year. Potentially a podium in a Haas. Genuinely, I do. I think that moving to Haas is the best thing Esteban could have done. It is a complete change in mindset. It is a fresh start, and he can go in. He just seems happier. And I think with that will come an increase in performance. I do think him and Ollie will be a great little pair. And I do think that, as I said, I think if Haas can just give them a decent car, they're absolutely flying. Call me mad for it, but I'm locking in P8, Esteban Ocon. SJ Bestie. All right, now in P7, I've gone Kimi Antonelli. I think he will have the best year out of all the rookies. I think he has probably the best opportunity moving into Mercedes. As I said, yeah, I think it's the best opportunity any of the rookies have got for potentially race wins. In all seriousness, I genuinely think we'll see Kimi Antonelli win a race this year. And listen, I think he'll make mistakes and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But I think on the whole, he will have a genuinely impressive rookie season. I think he will impress from the outset. He might have a wobble here and there, but I think fairly quickly we will get the news that his contract has been extended with Mercedes. I think Toto will be keen to lock that in. And I think he'll have a decent year. I think P7 is very good for Kimi Antonelli in his rookie year. I think Mercedes, as I've said before, I think Mercedes is figuring out the physics and everything on these ground effect cars. I think they will have a bit of a better season than they did last year. I do think Kimi Antonelli will have a lovely little season. As I said, I think he'll win a Grand Prix in his rookie year and he'll prove all these doubters wrong that said he shouldn't be getting that seat. All right, now for P6, I've gone for Antonelli's teammate. I've gone for George Russell. Again, I think Mercedes is going to have a better year. I think that they will have increased the performance of the car. I think it'll handle a lot better. I think the drivers will be able to extract more out of it. I do think Russell will have the advantage over Antonelli just out of pure experience alone. And I do think that he's going to be able to nab a few race wins throughout the year. And I think he'll have a lovely little year, to be honest with you. I think Mercedes is in for a solid year, to be quite frank. And I think Russell is looking at a P6 finish in the championship. All right, now into the top 5. And for P5 in the 2025 World Drivers' Championship, I've gone Max Verstappen. I think Red Bull will have a slightly better car than last year. I do think it will be an aggressive car. I think it will have a few handling issues, and I think there will be a few tracks that they do struggle at. However, I do think Max will have a solid year. And as I said, with other drivers, and as he has done in the past, I think he'll be able to extract every ounce of performance out of that car and deliver some truly great drives. The reason I haven't put Max higher up is 2024 was won, I believe, at those sort of opening races where Max was winning. And yeah, he didn't win in Australia, but he won nearly every single race around it. And it meant that he opened up such a gap to the other drivers that when it got to later in the year and Max wasn't winning races and the other teams were, nobody could really get close to Max because he had just opened up such a gap at the beginning of the year that nobody could really close it back down. I don't think that's going to be the same for this year. I think right from the outset, Max is going to have fierce competition from McLaren, from Ferrari, and he's not going to win the first 5 out of 6 races or, you know, whatever it is. Field is going to be so much more competitive, and those opening races, he's not going to be able to just extend such a lead on everybody else that nobody can touch him in the rest of the year. He is going to have to fight so hard, and it is going to be a fierce fight. And I just think that the margins between P5 and winning the championship, P1, are going to be so close. I said it in my predictions video last week that I genuinely think that this championship is going down to the checkered flag in Abu Dhabi for both titles, constructors and drivers. And I do think that Max is in that fight right the way to the end. Like, we could be going into Abu Dhabi. I think more likely we're going in with a 3-way fight potentially for the title. But looking at these drivers that I've put between 5 and 1st, it could be any one of them, to be honest with you. And that is what makes this season very exciting. You can never count out Max Verstappen. I've said it before, I'll say it again. You can never count him out from race wins or championship wins. And I'm locking in P5, but I don't think there's going to be much in points difference between 5 and 1st. All right, P4, I've gone for Oscar Piastri. And listen, I think McLaren is going to continue their very strong performance into this year. I hope that McLaren don't make any drastic changes that really screw up the performance of their car, because they were on to something last year. And I think when it comes to Oscar, he will continue his sort of trajectory up the field, wherein that he's finding these flaws and things that he's not sort of doing so well, and he's ironing them out, and he's sort of sorting out the issues that he has, and he is becoming an all-round much better driver. Now, with that being said, I don't think he'll be able to match Lando. I do think that Lando's time in F1, his experience will put him further up the field from Oscar. But I think it'll be a solid year from Oscar Piastri. I think we're looking at a year for Oscar where he will get a few more wins, continue to fight at the front of the pack, showcase that he is a future world champion, and I just have an all-round solid year. I just don't think he's top 3 yet. All right, moving into our top 3, and for P3, I've gone Lewis Hamilton. I think Lewis Hamilton's in a fairly similar situation to Esteban Ocon, where it's a new team, it's a fresh start, it's a new mindset. We are letting go of all of the issues and things that have weighed them down, and we are stepping into something that is fresh and exciting, and there's a lot of buzz around Ferrari this year. There is a lot of buzz, and there is a lot of people feeling that this could be a Ferrari year. I am one. I do think Ferrari's winning the Constructors' Championship. He looks happier. He looks like all his troubles have left him. I genuinely think he's going to have such a good year. He's going to have some great fights. He's going to be scoring points. He's not going to have as many issues with the car. I just think he's going to have such a better time driving this year. And I think a lot of that is just down to his excitement to be driving for Ferrari. And I think it is going to be a great year for Hamilton. I've seen a lot of people saying that, Hamilton's not going to perform and he's got half a year, and if he's not performing by, the halfway mark, everybody's just going to turn on him and all this kind of stuff. I hope that doesn't happen, but I think he's going to have a good year. I'm not worried. And I think it's a top 3 finish for Sir Lewis Hamilton. So yeah, I'm locking in P3 for Lewis Hamilton. As I said, I think Ferrari's going to have a lovely little year. And with that, P2, I've got Charles Leclerc. Now, I've seen a lot of people saying that this is Charles Leclerc's year. He is going to win it. And listen, as a Ferrari fan, as a Charles Leclerc fan, I would love nothing more than Charles Leclerc to win the Drivers' Championship this year. I think it's going to be an incredibly tight fight. As I said when I spoke about Max, I think there's going to be nothing. There's going to be no huge differences. I think it's going to be such a fight. I think we're looking at a year where Charles Leclerc is going to be winning more races. I think Ferrari's going to have a great year. There's something about Ferrari this year. I feel it in my bones. He's going to have a great year, and I am here for it. I don't think there's going to be much between Charles in P2 and P1. And I'm excited for Charles Leclerc and Ferrari for this year. Part of me wants to put in P1, part of me wants to go full on Charles Leclerc fanboy. But I'm going to refrain myself. I think he's just narrowly. Is that it? Narrowly? He's just going to miss out on it by a smidge. But all round, I predict a very good year for Charles Leclerc. Now, coming up with P1 on our World Drivers' Champion, I've gone Lando Norris. All that good stuff I said about McLaren, that they will continue their strong performance and they're off the back of a great win and Lando's got a good mindset, and he was on this morning, British morning talk show, where he was saying that he's never felt better in his mindset, he's never felt healthier, he's never felt stronger. He feels he's in such a good spot to go and fight and attack for that World Championship, and I think this could be his year. I'm putting all my eggs in the Lando Norris basket for him to win the Drivers' Championship. He's got to do it this year. I think it's his championship to lose, and I pray that he doesn't. I also think he's the bookies' favourite for the championship. I think he is the favourite to win it. So if I was a betting man, I would probably put money on him to win. I mean, I might also stick like a cheeky tenner on Charles Leclerc, but I would put money on him. And I think actually somebody said to him he was the bookie's favourite, and his reply was, well, I hope I make them a lot of money. So yeah, I'm sticking with Lando Norris. I think Lando Norris will be our 2025 Drivers' Champion. And that is it. That is our full predictions for the 2025 F1 championship. So let me know in the comments what your guys' predictions are. I'd love to know who you think is winning the drivers, winning the constructors, Do you think Jack Doohan's getting dropped? How do you think Kimi Antonelli's going to get on? How do you think Carlos Sainz? There's so many stories to focus on and follow in 2025, and I am very excited to get into the 2025 season for it to kick off. I think it's like a month today is race day. We will be back very soon with a full reaction to all of the 2025 liveries and race suits. We've had the reveal of some of the race suits, but we're going to do a full breakdown after F1 75, after the launch event. We will be live over on TikTok during F1 75 on Tuesday night. So head to our TikTok, link in the description box, and make sure you're following along. And we will see you very soon. Have a lovely rest of your day. I love you. Bye.